All right. Everybody, welcome back to the Not a Rabbi podcast, where we discover the uniqueness about Judaism, and where I am happy to tell you guys, this is really exciting news. You're going to have to, hopefully everybody is sitting down for this. But I just got some statistics in, and I usually don't like to talk about this type of stuff, but I'm going to bring it up now. I am number 22. I am the 22nd most popular Jewish podcast. Yes, you heard that straight. I am the number 22 most popular Jewish podcast in Saudi Arabia. Yes. Can you imagine that? It is crazy that we have reached such tremendous heights. So, because, and why is this? Why is this? Because of the wonderful people that we have that allow me to do this recording live twice a month, and those are, proper grammar here, if I were only an English teacher, those are the moderators of the unofficial Fifth Column podcast Discord server. Yes, we'd like to thank them once again for their allowing me to continually record here, and I will do so until I get thrown out. So thank you very much, guys and gals, for allowing me to continuously record here. Also, at the start of the show this time, I would like to thank Logan Eastman for the intro music. Once again, there will be a link to his Substack in the show notes. If you have not signed up, I would definitely suggest that you do. It's a very interesting Substack dealing with AI. In that vein, if you haven't subscribed yet to the Not a Rabbi Substack, I would certainly do that as well. We've got content that goes out in the form of a podcast twice a month. Every week, we actually do have what I like to call a quote-unquote newsletter as well, that you can go ahead and read. Not too long. I don't try to stress and strain anyone's brains with too much verboseness, or verbosity. I don't know, verboseness or verbosity? I think verboseness is probably correct, but I like the way the verbosity sounds. So I might have to just create a new word out of whole cloth for that. Okay, got an interesting show today, I'd like to think. I got a couple of articles that we're going to discuss, and then we're going to talk about the idea, the Jewish concept, and the Jewish idea of forgiveness. How does it go? What is it like? And how important is it? So with that, let's get into the news. And I'm going to post the first news article into the chat, theoretically. Okay, I'm not going to post the first news article into the chat because apparently I don't know how to cut and paste. I apparently need to be a president of an Ivy League college to be able to do that. So there we go. First one is posted into the chat over here, and it's a relatively old article dating from the 17th of December. I was going to talk about it last week, which would have made it slightly timelier because that would have been December 31st. Unfortunately, events did not allow me to do so, and that's going to kind of be a theme throughout this podcast, where I had some content that I wanted to talk about, specifically the main topic, which would have been perfect for last week, but we got to go with it, and we're going to do it this week. Additionally, I have put up just as a total aside, I've put up a schedule for some of the coming topics that we're going to be discussing, just to get an idea. And if you have any questions about any of those, you can certainly fire away, mostly in the Substack comment section. That would be the best place to do it. All right. So anyway, we're going to get going on this topic, this article here. It's really a blog post from the Volk Conspiracy. It is saying that don't put too much stock in a survey finding that 67% of 18 through 24-year-olds say that Jews are oppressors. This was something that was very big and that came out this poll that was done by Harvard and Harris, and they asked the question, and the answer seemed to indicate that in the 18 through 24-year-old age groups, the most people thought they were oppressed. Jews were oppressors. What's interesting is that was the major one. That was over 50%. However, the other ones were not so great, aside from 65 and plus. As Ilya Somin seems to indicate in this, that there's a major flaw with this poll that they came out with. And that is the way that the question is asked. And when I looked at this question, I said, this is really a strange type of question that's being asked. So, and here it is. Do you think that Jews as a class are oppressors and should be treated as oppressors, or that it is a false ideology? Now, the major problem with this is, and something that I saw right away, even before reading the rest of the post, is that it says, do you think the Jews are oppressors and should be treated as oppressors? So you have this dual positivity that you could go ahead and say. Now you might say yes because you agree with that they should be treated as oppressors, but they aren't really oppressors. Or you could say that they are really oppressors, but you don't think that they should be treated as oppressors, and you're going to say yes to that. So there's a major flaw in the way that the question is asked. That was an issue that I saw. Correct, and Ilya Somin sees that as well, and I'll trust him because he's probably a lot smarter than I am. Which not a very high bar to clear. I do get that. So the second point that he has here is that the terminology that's used, oppressors and ideology. And these are things that people who don't follow politics may not be familiar with, so therefore we do not, you shouldn't confuse them either. So that is basically what he goes. And again, another flaw in the article that he mentions is the fact that there is no middle ground here. It's a binary choice, which I think with any type of poll that you have, you cannot have a binary choice. You need to have at least a third choice. If you take a look at, let's say, some of these types of polls that you have with satisfaction polls, there's generally going to be at the very least a 5 points that you're going to have. You're going to either have a 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Sometimes it goes to a 7 or even a 9, depending on the scale that they want to go ahead and do. And so this is a major problem. Another interesting point here that Ilya Somin brings out is that the Pew Research Center had a survey in September 22 where Jews had a higher favorability rating than any other group included in the survey. Who are some of those other groups in the survey? You maybe want to know. They were mainline Protestants, Catholics, evangelical Christians, atheists, Muslims, and Mormons, the Latter-day Saints. So anyway, that is their favorability rating was at 35%, with a neither don't know enough to say at 58% and a very or somewhat unfavorable rating of 6%. Major problems with this. This, like I said, was a poll that probably was spread out far and wide on the social medias, which thankfully I do not partake in for the most part. I've tried using notes on Substack, which I'm not a big fan of for different reasons. Everyone's got their own things. I try to stay away from those because of my own personal reasons. We'll just leave it at that. But anyway, this is the first issue. I would highly recommend reading the entire article for you to get a better idea of why and really how questions need to be asked in a very specific way in order to get the information that you're looking for. And if you divert or deviate from any of from the way to ask the question, you're going to get results that are extremely difficult to understand or not what you expected. So interesting thing to bring out over there. Any questions from the chat? All right, here's the next news article that I'm bringing up, putting it onto the chat, which talks about Surfside, Florida. And apparently, I haven't been to Florida in a very long time, just for those of you who are wondering. But apparently, Surfside, Florida has become a hotspot of kosher restaurants. There are over 20 Shabbos observant stores on Harding Avenue, which I presume is the main strip of Surfside, Florida. It seems like that there are elections coming up on March 19th, and there are two candidates running for mayor. One of them is the current mayor, Shlomo Danziger, and the other person running for mayor is the former mayor, Charles Burkett. And it seems that Mr. Burkett has gone with an interesting strategy of attempting to get reelected. Burkett said, "I believe we should have long ago had a majority of downtown restaurants that do not close for half of the weekend." Hey, just out of curiosity, what would you be talking about there, Charles Burkett? I wonder. Would that be considered as a dog whistle? I'm not a very big dog whistle fan in using that, but this certainly seems very targeted at specific individuals, those who are Shabbos observant, right? Which is a problem. Now, what does he mean by that? Has he gone back on this at all? I do not know. If anybody would like to update me on that, I would be happy to have that information shared. But then he said something else. We already have enough people living in Surfside. When have you ever heard a mayor say that we've had enough people living in the city? People that would bring their families in. And they're generally, the Jewish families aren't going to be larger families and the like. This is definitely a problem, and definitely something really problematic. So I don't know if he has gone back on these. There's a link to his blog. He does not say, he changes those things. He does not go change any of these things from what I see. At least in this article, I really need to go and take a look more. This is definitely something that is problematic. He wants to get rid of the Jews, it looks like, or limit the amount of Jews that there are in a city. This would be akin, I don't know how much power a mayor in Surfside has. So I couldn't tell you one way or another if this really makes a major difference. I don't think that he has full power. Probably not. It's not a totalitarian thing, but it is. So comment over here in the chat. You would think that if he were talking about tourism, he wouldn't mention the residents first. Exactly. Showcasing interesting and diverse shopping and dining options for our residents, as many guests as we can reasonably accommodate. Again, this is something that's happened in New Jersey and in parts of upstate New York State, I should say, and where the residents do not appreciate the Jews moving in. And I will grant you that there are some issues that do crop up. I think that it's incumbent upon the people that are coming in to treat and act with a complete amount of respect and try to act as normally as you possibly can, not doing things that anger and annoy the people that that are your neighbors now, to not create this hatred. That's one thing. The other thing is just this, I don't want to say it's blatant, but it seems pretty dog whistly to me. Let's just leave it at that. And so, for those of you who don't know what a dog whistle is, in case you don't know what a dog whistle is, let me just quickly explain that for you. A dog whistle is, kind of quote unquote a coded message for a certain type of person to understand what you're talking about. That was something that was used or against President Trump often, where they would say that he is dog whistling. It's been used in other examples as well. I can't think of another one off the top of my head. I'd like to give multiple examples if I can, but unfortunately, my brain not work gooder. So therefore, I'm not going to go any further about that. Okay, I found this next article interesting, and hopefully you do too, which is where Yeshiva University, which is a college slash yeshiva, I guess you could call it. It's a university slash yeshiva, because hey, it's called Yeshiva University, right? Where they have general studies for a college degree. They could get plenty of different types of bachelor's degrees there. It's a private institution, and they also have a dual track, I guess you could say, where you continuously are learning Torah in the mornings and doing your doing your Torah studies in the mornings as well. I will not get into the internal politics of the Orthodox Jewish community on this, whether or not this is a good or a bad thing. I'm not going to touch that. I'm just here to talk about the news. But what they're doing is very interesting, and now they are going ahead and having a joint MBA program along with what is called smicha, or rabbinic ordination. And this is a very, very interesting idea, and I like this idea very much, because a rabbi's job, when you look at it, the job of a rabbi these days in communities, it tends to be more than just preaching to your flock, as you were. You're going to have to be involved in fundraising. You're going to have to be involved in creating a vision. You're going to have to be involved in a lot of other things that are going on externally from just leading the congregation. And by the way, just leading a congregation in and of itself, I think requires an MBA in some ways, but that's neither here nor there. But you really need to be on top of things. You need to know what's going on. And so I think that this is a very wonderful idea. As somebody that has an MBA, I like this idea very much. I think that this is something that adds a lot of value to what a rabbi can do, and what a rabbi can understand. I really, really think that this is a great idea. I wish more places would actually do this, but whether or not they will, I don't know, but I really, really like this idea. That is all on that. Any questions okay, here we go. Do you think Judaism has a closer connection to business than other religions? I was thinking about this from the marriage episode, the idea of marriage as a contract as opposed to vows. I don't think that necessarily they have more of a business idea. I would think that Judaism as a whole, and again, just let me make this clear, I'm always talking, when I say Judaism as a whole, I'm talking about Orthodox Judaism, although I hate that term. I hate all of those terms. I don't like the specifications and breaking things down. That's a different story for a different time. I think that Judaism itself looks at everything and the entire day, your entire life, as following and working to follow the commandments that God provides you with. So, that is how it, and a lot of that stems, and just specifically about the marriage contract, a lot of it stems from what the Torah says are the responsibilities of a husband to a wife. So we already have that in there, so it just adds on to that. And just as a point of I think I mentioned this as well, but I'll just point of clarification in case it wasn't mentioned, which is very possible because a lot of times I think I said something, but I actually don't. The contract itself, there's a debate whether or not the contract itself is something that is rabbinically, is a rabbinic thing, or it's something that is the Torah says that you should do. And there are proofs back and forth to that. I've probably in one of the tractates of the Babylonian Talmud, but that is what, so it's not clear cut that this is actually, it's rabbinic. You don't necessarily need to have this, like I had mentioned before, in order to go ahead and to, and to have the actual wedding happen. With the way that you ask the question always reminds me of the Ferengi, however, on Star Trek The Next Generation, and mostly Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So just in which a lot of people I know, and I think it was actually talked about a lot, they were called the Space Jews as well. So hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, I apologize. But any questions, any other questions regarding this article or any of the other articles that we covered so far? Let's get on to the main topic of today. And the main topic that we're going to talk about is the topic of the Jewish concept of forgiveness. And what does the Jewish concept of forgiveness mean? What does it do? And the like. What's interesting about this is that, and actually this is why I really wanted to do it last week, but like I said, by circumstances, God had another plan, so we did not do this. But the Torah, reading the Torah is divided up. I wouldn't say it's 52. I think it's like 48 different, what we call a parsha, or a section of the Torah that is read. Just a quick overview, I guess. The Torah, when I say the Torah, I am specifically referring in this case to the 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy in English, Bereshis, Shemos, Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim in Hebrew. And last Shabbos, December 30th, we read the end of the book of Genesis. And there's a very interesting story in the end of Genesis where after Jacob dies, the patriarch Jacob, after he dies, the brothers go into Joseph. And remember now, Joseph at this point in time is still the viceroy of Egypt. He is second in command only to Paro, as we say in Hebrew, Pharaoh in English. He is second in command. And they say to him, Dad said that you got to forgive us. And you got to, and they then say, oh, please forgive us. And they're begging. And Joseph says, there's nothing to forgive. We're good. We're all okay. And this is, I think, I was thinking about it this morning. I think this is the first example in the Bible of a person forgiving another person. This is the first example of this. And this gives us a lot of understanding about this. Now, forgiveness, right? What goes on? Interesting thing about forgiveness is, and I'm going to talk specifically, right? In Judaism, there are things that you might do that are between man and creator, such as praying, such as saying blessings before or after you eat, or other things along those lines. Those are all between man and creator. Additionally, there are things between man and your fellow man. And the Talmud says that before Yom Kippur or actually not before Yom Kippur, but Yom Kippur does not take out those, Yom Kippur does not take out those sins that you did to somebody else unless that person forgives you. So you can't go into Yom Kippur having stolen, $2,000 from somebody and say, well, it's Yom Kippur, that guy's, I'm going to be forgiven for that. No, that doesn't help. That doesn't work. That person, you need to ask that person for forgiveness, and they need to forgive you. And in fact, the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Israel Meir Kagan, who was a Torah sage in the late 1800s, early 1900s, he added to a prayer that we say before we start the Yom Kippur services, that he says basically everybody is forgiven from me because I have to forgive. We need to forgive everybody. So it's an extremely, extremely important idea, this concept of forgiveness. In fact, going back in history here, according to Maimonides was a doctor by profession. He was a tremendous scholar as well. He wrote a commentary on the Mishnah, which is part of the Oral Torah, the part of the Talmud, and he also wrote down an entire book of laws based on the Talmud, based on the Torah, the Bible and the Torah as well. And he says in his laws of tshuva, laws of repentance, I'll try to put a pin in that word repentance for us in a second. One is required to forgive his fellow man who asked for forgiveness for something that he had done wrong to him, and it is considered cruel to refuse to become appeased. Rather, even if one has sinned very greatly against you and caused you much pain, when he asks you for forgiveness, the way of a Jew is to forgive willingly and wholeheartedly. Wow. Imagine that, right? Imagine if somebody has gone ahead and done something to you so badly that you could never possibly forgive them. And then they come and they go ahead and they say to you before Yom Kippur, so kind of going into your head why he's asking for forgiveness. And he says, I'm very sorry. I apologize. I really didn't do that. I did this, but I'm sorry it hurt you. Whatever it is, however they ask. And according to Maimonides, you need to go ahead, forgive them. Somebody goes even further, and they say that if someone has wronged you but hasn't asked you for forgiveness, what are you supposed to do? You should go out of your way to appear in his presence so you can give him the opportunity to ask for forgiveness. So forgiveness has a lot. It's a lot of responsibility, because you know what? A lot of times, maybe you don't want to forgive. You don't want to forgive. You're not ready. But according to this law that Maimonides gives, you are required to do so wholeheartedly. That's a tremendous change in what your human nature should be. It's a tremendous change. You have to really work on yourself, and we all have to work on ourselves with this type of thing, going forward. But you really have to work hard on yourself to want to forgive this individual. Totally. I mean, it is just, it's very, very tough, and we do it. As a teacher of young Jewish males, I get asked every year before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur if I forgive them for how they act in the middle of class. I always do. I always do. There was actually one case where I didn't, but that's because, and actually I wound up doing it anyway. But I had my notebook, my loose leaf notebook of all my material was stolen from me and disappeared. Nobody, quote unquote, knew where it was, and I basically leveled with the class and I said, "Look, guys, this is something that you stole from me, and unless I get it back, and you can do it anonymously, that's fine. I don't, that's fine. If you want to ask but I'm not going to forgive anybody on Yom Kippur for this action should it happen, should I not get it back." Lo and behold, the notebook was miraculously found. It's a miracle! It's a miracle! So that is that's my story about forgiveness. But I got to say, I got a letter from the student apologizing and asking me to forgive him. And I did. And mostly because he asked for forgiveness and he was very sincere in the letter. It was not an anonymous letter. It was dropped off by the individual, and he said there is a letter in. He actually had, as we know, just to drop off, go off slightly on a tangent. He dropped off a package for me on Purim. As you know, on Purim we deliver, stuff to different people. So he dropped off something for me, and he said to me, "There's a letter in here. You need to read it." So I knew exactly who it was from. So that, but it wasn't anonymous. But I called him and I said, "Look, yes, I forgive you completely." It's not easy. It's not easy. I'm not going to say that it is. And we all have to, work on ourselves with that. In fact, there's the Talmud says that one who is the cause for others to be punished will he himself be punished. So, basically what that tells you is that if you are not going to forgive somebody and you are going to cause them punishment, it's going to boomerang back onto you somehow. How that happens, I don't know. That is up to God and God's divine judgment, and I will not try to figure that out. That is more than slightly above my pay grade. So, that is... I think the Jewish concept of forgiveness is an extremely powerful one. Somebody had asked earlier, they weren't able to make it into the live chat, but they had asked me earlier, how does this compare and contrast to the Christian idea of forgiveness? And quite honestly, I don't know. I am not somebody that I'm not familiar enough with the Christian concept of forgiveness to go ahead and talk about that. So I'm not going to. I apologized to him. I'll apologize to you if you're looking for that. If you have any insight on that on your own, and you can now compare and contrast a little bit for yourself, I'm very happy to have helped with that. And that's that. All right. Any questions from the crowd? Can you or do you want to relate that to current events or history of the Jewish people? I can to a degree, and this is a very interesting thing. I was just listening to a lecture by somebody by the name of Rabbi Reuven Brand, who is in Skokie, Illinois, aka Chicago, and he was talking about Elie Wiesel. How Elie Wiesel was very, very angry with God. For those of you who don't know, Elie Wiesel was a survivor of Auschwitz, and he wrote a book, Darkness, and the like. And, I think it was Darkness, right? He wrote multiple books about the Holocaust, if I'm not mistaken. I've never read any of his stuff, to be fair. But in 1997, he said he was finally willing to I'm going to put this into my words because we're talking about the topic of forgiveness. He was willing to forgive God now. So, that's the current events or history of the Jewish people. Can people forgive? People have a tremendous amount of power to forgive. I don't know. That's up to each individual person. Time eventually does take care of those types of things sometimes. And especially, let's say, in light of what happened on October 7th, are people going to be able to forgive? Maybe, eventually. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's something that remains to be seen with that. I can't say with certainty. That's an individual choice. Hopefully that answers the question. I tend to go off on tangents sometimes, which my students love when I go off on tangents because they don't have to they don't have to learn the real stuff. Let's see. Any other questions coming in? I'm thinking of the state of Israel and the prosecution of the people who abetted the Holocaust. Was there any act of forgiveness of people who confessed or apologized? Did that ever happen? It may have. I'm not familiar with it. Obviously the major one that I could think of is Adolf Eichmann, and there was no apology there at all, nor in the Nuremberg trials. I guess that there was one person who really regretted what he did. I used to have his book. It was a memoir from somebody that was in the Third Reich. I believe he was Hitler's architect or something like that. And he said, "Oh yeah, I shouldn't have done this." And he wrote a memoir about his time in the Third Reich and the upper echelons of it. That would be, and he kind of just apologized for what he did during that time. But that's the only thing I could possibly think of with that. So with that, we would like to once again thank you for listening to the Not a Rabbi podcast. Do not forget, please, to share and to subscribe to the Not a Rabbi Substack to continue getting Not a Rabbi content. Additionally, we'd like to thank the moderators of the unofficial Fifth Column podcast Discord server. Still a mouthful to say. Would like to thank for letting us record in here and in front of a live studio audience. Also like to thank Logan Eastman for his intro music. Once again, the link for Logan's Substack is going to be in the show notes. Do not forget to subscribe to that as well. See you next week, in fact. And I am Aaron Benedict, and I am not a rabbi.